Now, I hesitate to bring into a public arena a new idea that I've only had a few weeks. This is but I'll mention it, I'll see how this goes over. This is an experiment too. If the mind of God contains an infinite source of bliss, then if we're thinking about the nature of blissful human experiences, and I thought, why not think in terms of one of the most attractive of all blissful experiences, namely the orgasm, how would that relate to the mind of God? Well, the standard theory would say, well, it's evolved to serve reproductive physiology and because of short circuits in the brain or neurotransmitters or serotonin release or something in the thalamus or the limbic system or wherever. Well, that may be true, it probably is, but it doesn't explain the subjective experience. And so that's not explained at all by anything in mechanistic science. What if, at the moment of orgasm, there's a kind of opening, temporary opening of a kind of window into the divine bliss? Then we're drawn towards the mind of God. The mind of God attracts us through not just orgasms, but any pleasurable or attractive phenomenon. Ultimately, these are connections with the mind of God. I think that the interesting thing about this, you see, is traditional theologies in the West and elsewhere, and indeed in Greek philosophy. God works in the world according to Aristotle, which is pre-Christian, of course, and according to Christian theologies, and according to other theologies, by being attractive. God doesn't push the world from behind like a steam engine. God pulls the world from the future. We're attracted, we're drawn towards the divine. God is the prime mover of the universe in the medieval cosmology, not by pushing it, but by pulling it. The whole universe is striving to get closer to God. And how this reflects itself in human life is the otherwise inexplicable strivings that humans have for truth and beauty and goodness. And these have propelled human beings, or drawn human beings, for a very long time. This precedes Christianity, of course. And interestingly, even some of my atheist colleagues, the reason they don't believe in the kind of God they've rejected is because they believe in truth. And they think truth is the most important goal. Well, I do too. But the fact they're so drawn to truth, to such a position that they become, some of them, fanatical atheists. They do so because of a devotion to truth. It's a kind of unconscious devotion to this divine principle. Some people are irresistibly drawn to beauty. We all are, to some degree, and so are animals. When you hear beautiful bird song, when you look at the way animals are drawn to flowers and to fruits. And again, one can see that as being drawn by the divine. And goodness, being drawn towards selfless service, to being drawn towards doing the right thing, again, is a basic human need. We find it in all societies, various forms of altruism, which go way beyond the needs of just surviving yourself or helping your kids to survive. There's a kind of drive seen and recognized in all human cultures of a pull towards goodness. Now, I think these are ways in which the divine mind works in our lives, whether we're aware of it or not. And of course, we can cut ourselves off from this divine mind, and we can deny it exists. I now see atheism as a terrible self-deprivation of atheists. I mean, in the name of truth, that's their devotion to a higher good, which is a higher good, by rejecting a totally inadequate image of God, a God who just fills in gaps that science can't explain, or who starts off the world machine in the first place with the Big Bang, or who fine-tunes the laws and constants of nature. By rejecting a completely inadequate view of God, they end up with a view of the universe that's totally unconscious, that has no purpose in it, that humans have no purpose. There's no purpose beyond just living as well as with as much pleasure as you can, and maybe subscribing to some higher ideals, because there's always an unconscious drive towards the divine, even in atheists, and that's what gives them their nobility, because many of them are noble. But it closes down the ways in which we can communicate with the divine, where we can be open to God's Spirit, which can inspire and guide us. And in the end, it's bad for your health. So studies have shown in the United States that people who have religious belief or practice live longer and are healthier and recover from diseases better than those that don't. For white males, it's about 5 years. For black males, it's about 15 years extension of life. Now, if any pill were known to do that, it would be hailed a medical breakthrough. And yet, these are well-established statistics. There's well-established statistics that prayer and meditation help people's health. And I think that's because they provide channels or connections with what is the medium in which we live and move and have our being, to quote St. Paul. This vision of God is the vision of God that's the religion that all religions have had, is a God in whom we live and move and have our being, and who's the source of our conscious life, and to whom our minds are linked and from whom our minds are derived.